Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is one of the very early episodes of Mehna's Talks AI, and we are here joined by an amazing speaker, one of the pioneers in the AI space, and someone I have been hearing a lot. So it's truly an honor to be in the presence of this individual. So without further ado, I'll pass it off to you, Hanan, to share a bit about what you do and what kind of motivates you and integrates you to be in this space.
Yeah, thank you, Mehnas, for the opportunity. Very quickly, my name is Hanan. I'm an academic practitioner. So, what I do in the strategy space is obviously during the day, I work for an OEM as a senior manager in transformation. A lot of what I do is actually after I finish my job, which is a lot of teaching, a lot of research, consulting in the strategy space. And lately, over the past few years, I've been really focused on artificial intelligence, especially from a strategic lens. And that's really what I try to do. I try to educate the masses from senior leadership down to entry level on how to approach artificial intelligence correctly, how not to turn your company into one that just does AI washing. And that's really the mission that I'm on.
No, that's amazing, and we're super excited to hear from some of your experiences and truly dissect into like because AI is something that's rapidly like evolving, right? And a lot of the like even for myself, like working with the government and in the charity sector, I often find myself that with the full evolution of AI, we are like it's going so fast that we need to kind of catch a breath and learn like how do we navigate all this faster evolution. So one of the things that I often come across, especially with my job at the government of Canada, because it's a large organization, is how can organizations that are big can align with their AI strategic goals to enhance decision making, and what are some of the critical components of building AI literacy among leadership, because that's super important. Because if your leaders, the individuals who are leading the organizations, are not familiar on AI, and it's hard because of how fast it's evolving. So what's your take on that? Talk about that a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. So, really, the first thing organizations need to do when they come across any AI powered solution, any AI powered technology, is really to go back to the strategic goals, their strategic direction. What is it as a company that they need to provide customers with? They go back to their line of products and services. You have to maintain a strategic lens on any AI powered solution, and the fact that an AI in of itself isn't a strategy. It shouldn't be a strategy. It really is an enabler for a strategy. And so it shouldn't really alter your North Star for your company. Once you understand that AI is just an enabler, just like any other technology or non-technology enablers, then you start to apply the right lens to it. And then you start to employ it where it could accelerate your mission as a company. And a lot of the teaching that we do, especially when we teach in the executive education programs about strategy, because that's really what leads everything else in the organization. It really is done at three levels, right? There's corporate level strategy, there's business, and then there's tactical, which is the lowest level of strategy. At a corporate level, your goal is to define the growth and the business model for the organization, period. When you come down a step, a level below, and you're at the business level, the idea here is to understand, based on the growth that you want this business model to enable, how are you going to position your business? Are you going to differentiate, or are you going to adopt cost leadership? And then based on that, you get to the lowest level, which is really the functional level strategy. And sometimes we call it tactical level strategy. At this level, you're really honing in on specific building blocks that would enable you to attain a competitive advantage so that you stay competitive as a company. Notice that we haven't talked about artificial intelligence just yet. And that's where a lot of companies, especially the mature companies, the hierarchical organizations, that's the trap that they actually fall in. At the functional level of strategy, like I said, you really are focused on specific building blocks. Are you going to focus on innovation? Are you going to focus on quality, on customer responsiveness, or on operational efficiency? Some companies master one or more, but it's rare that even the most successful companies are going to master all four because that really depletes the resources. Once you understand exactly what the building blocks that you want to focus on, then you actually look at AI as a technology and see where you can employ it or deploy its solution to accelerate any of these areas. And so one of the traps that we see companies fall in is to develop an AI strategy. There isn't really such a thing. Think of AI as
Yeah.
email is a tool that enables communication. It makes your communication faster, more effective, but still is a tool to enable communication. AI is exactly the same thing, right? So once you understand exactly what you want to focus on as an organization, because at the end, you do have a portfolio of products and services, you have target customers and critical customers. AI shouldn't really change all of these. If anything, that should help you become faster, more efficient, more innovative, but it shouldn't really alter your North Star. And so, to make sure that the AI powered solution or AI powered technology that you are wanting to deploy aligns with your strategic direction, you need to understand exactly what is it that you are going to get out of that AI powered solution. Is it going to improve your operational efficiency? Is it going to accelerate your innovation? So once you know that, not only will you be able to know exactly what AI section you should be focused on, but you will also make sure any investment that you make in AI, it's going to have a good ROA, good ROI, and all of the standard metrics. That really leads us to AI literacy. But I know we're going to get into that. So I'm happy to get any of your reflections before we get into
No,
AI.
that's very interesting because I've been noticing a lot of the organizations start with building a AI strategy, but what you are saying is not focus on AI strategy because AI is an enabler, but to truly define what are your business transformation goals, what is it that you really want AI to help you achieve, and then as opposed to having your processes or your needs adapt to AI, but you're saying like to reinvent with AI.
Exactly. One of the traps is this technology first trap. And so, especially with mature organizations, startups are different. They're
Mm-hmm.
structured differently. They usually are the pioneers when it comes to technology development. So startups are different. We really are talking about mature organizations who also happen to have very deep pockets, and they are ready to pour a lot of money on R&D to acquire AI powered solutions. So the idea, like we said, is to perceive AI correctly, which is an enabler, and therefore you shouldn't be putting a lot of effort into developing an AI strategy. You should have a strategic plan to deploy an AI powered solution or tool, but not really an AI strategy. The example that I usually give is, when was the last time you needed to develop an email strategy, right? A PowerPoint strategy. AI should be actually perceived exactly the same way. What makes AI a big trap for companies to fall in is several reasons. Number one, the pace of technological advancements in this field is extremely high. So if you're not able to keep up, you might actually think that you're missing out. In fact, you probably are not really missing out on anything because you always need to go back to exactly what tools do you need to deploy what's in your portfolio. The other thing is the field is inherently complex. So even if you wanted to simplify what artificial intelligence is, if the individual and you're speaking with is not very technologically savvy, they will not be able to connect with the idea itself, right? Because as soon as you start talk, whether you're talking about traditional ML or Gen I, as soon as you start talking about exactly what AI is, you do lose a lot of people. So the fast pace, the inherent complexity of the field, um, the very broad promises that AI actually makes to all organizations makes it a very easy trap to fall into, just like AI washing and all of the other traps that mature organizations typically fall in.
No, that's very interesting. And so let's get into AI leadership right now because that's a very important topic, AI literacy. And one of the things that, I have noticed when we talk about AI literacy, a lot of the folks tend to interpret it as like you need to know like coding or heavy technical stuff. And you need to be like, very like you need to know the coding language and whatnot. So what's your take on like when we talk about AI literacy? Is it really about learning the technical intricacies of AI, or what do we really mean by AI literacy, and how important is it for the leadership to learn?
So this is a really good question, and I think the most accurate answer is it depends, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you have an organization, the managerial levels or the leadership levels in any organization vary from the most senior level, the most executive, all the way to entry level. AI literacy is and will continue to be really different at every level. The criticality of AI literacy will also differ at multiple levels. Let's start at the top because at the top is where the strategic decisions are made, big investment decisions are made. So when we talk about AI literacy at the top, it's probably going to look and seem different than when we talk about AI literacy at mid-level management, if not entry level. At the highest levels of management or senior leadership, AI literacy is all around having that fundamental understanding of what artificial intelligence is and what it means to actually deploy an AI powered solution in your organization. It also entails that as a business leader, you come to the discussion with good questions, informed questions of what use cases can we actually use to deploy, even at a pilot, as a pilot, AI powered solutions. What are the business value, what's the business value that we will get? How do we quantify that business value and all of the other informed questions that you need to come to the discussion with. And then the last component of AI literacy is this appetite for continuous learning. Now, we're not going to expect CEOs and board of directors to be that technically savvy to where they become Python coders. That's probably not the intent. But we do want them to have a good contextual background and understanding of what this field means to their organization, specifically relative to advancing their portfolio. So that's what AI literacy means at a high level, at the highest level. It means having a fundamental understanding of what it is, what it entails to their organization. And then as you go kind of lower and lower in the organization, now you're becoming a little bit more technical, which AI in this regard isn't really different than any other technology that we've been developing. Take 5G, for instance, if you ask a senior leader what 5G is and what is the difference between 5G and 6G, you're probably going to receive vague responses. But then obviously, if you're talking to, senior leaders in tech or, senior managers in tech or even telecom, that literacy, that level of understanding becomes really different. And so in that regard, AI is just like any other technology we've been developing.
No, that's really great. One of the things that I always notice, it's how do senior leaders, especially those at the executive levels at large organization, stay on top of continuous learning, especially where AI is so rapidly evolving? Because most of the folks that I know in high leadership roles at the CEO or at that senior leadership skill like level, they already have such a busy schedule where they have all this rapid decision making to do. They are in between meetings and everything. So how do you stay on top of that continuous learning, which I find that sometimes it's easier to do for those who are in subject matter expert role, because you are continuously doing in that individual contributor role where you're hands-on learning and executing, versus someone who's at the decision making role. It's easier to kind of skip learning in your day to day. So how do you integrate that?
So at the highest level, and this is what I mentioned in a lot of my speaking engagements, at that level, like you said, their schedules are extremely busy.
Mhm.
So at that level, you really need to be very targeted, very purposeful in what you are wanting to learn, and probably should know the purpose or the desired outcome of that learning. Otherwise, you're just going to be swamped with, endless learning. Prioritization is another thing that business leaders at the executive level should actually employ. Meaning, what is if you think of the decisions that need to be made for your organization, think of what gets rolled up into the BOD, the Board of Director papers, which typically for most organizations you do it twice a year. What are the biggest questions? What are the biggest challenges for your organization? And maybe start there. Um, at that level of leadership, obviously we have different modes, different delivery methods to deliver knowledge. Probably at that level, sitting through a full-blown course, even a crash course, probably is not going to be the right thing to do. And so I go back to being very targeted, very purposeful. One of the ways in which CEOs and senior leaders can actually get that learning is through speaking engagements or corporate speaking engagements. That's when they bring on an expert who is familiar with the company, knows a little bit about the strategic challenges, and they will be able to deliver kind of think of them as specific nuggets of learning, of teaching, very targeted, very purposeful, and almost tailored so that the senior leaders can benefit from that knowledge. They also need to make sure that whatever they are learning is very applicable, very relatable to their organization. At that level, you're not really learning to broaden your perspective or um, explore avenues for career growth. You're really probably wanting to learn so that you um, become a better decision maker or a better influencer, right? So very targeted, very purposeful. Those are some of the things that come to my mind when it comes to um, how and why should business leaders really be on this continuous learning journey. At the end, you really have to be effective with your time and take the learning nugget that would enable you to either make a decision or influence your organization to take a specific direction.
No, I completely agree. So what you're saying is essentially like for them to kind of prioritize their time and their learning, and also doing like different engagement and talking to different individuals at that organizational level. So not only you are learning through not just courses and whatnot, but you're learning through individuals directly at the subject matter expertise. That's great. So now let's dive a little bit into process optimization with AI, and how can organization transform their operations with AI. Because one of the key things about AI, and we I have been focusing a lot on that. It's how do we use AI to drive operational efficiency, especially in the nonprofit sector. And I know this could be a um, big win for for large corporations and big organizations as well. So, what do you think? Like, how can AI be leveraged as a catalyst for transformative change within an organization? And also talk a little bit about how do large organization or even smaller organization navigate those changes, because change management is a big thing, and which is why I think it's slowing down AI adoption, especially in large organization.
Absolutely. So if you ask most organizations, the ones that are deploying AI powered solutions, what are the use cases that you're actually using to deploy AI powered solution? Probably most of the responses would be to improve operational efficiency. When you come to any organization, there are lots of processes, manual processes. And so to optimize your operational efficiency, your go-to method is to automate. And that's really what AI powered solution gives us in kind of in the first place. It's a mechanism for automation. So when you automate manual processes, think of data analytics, because for AI, data is really the bloodline. So think of the time it requires data analysts and data engineers to ingest the data, cleanse it, sort it, store it, drive some actionable insights, and then visualize that data. It does take a long time to actually do this. So with AI powered solutions, you can actually kind of rifle through the entire process, and you can get to your data visualizations, actionable insights and visualization in a very, very short amount of time. And so that digital transformation does promise a lot of operational efficiency gains, and that's I don't think there's any doubt in that area. AI is truly an enabler for digital transformation in organizations. Process reengineering, process redesign, any manual process, most manual processes you can actually automate. Another trap that organization fall into when it comes to AI is, while AI does promise a lot of operational efficiency gains, this is just one facet of what AI can enable us to actually achieve. Empirical research actually, at this point, tells us that when you think of productivity, which is essentially automating a lot of the manual processes and the labor time gain that you get, there's a misconception that an AI could replace jobs right away. It's a misconception. For most of the jobs, even when you automate most of the manual processes, you really are talking about 30% productivity gain, right? It's not really high. So when you look at all of the use cases, most of them fall in the operational efficiency bucket. It's a good bucket, but it's not really the only bucket to leverage AI. So yes, when it comes to transformation and process reengineering and automation, AI is a powerful enabler, but we have to keep in mind that AI powered solutions could actually enable us to achieve more in other facets. You can think of innovation, really to generate innovative ideas. In this bucket, you really are not talking about scale, but you are talking about scope. And so when you broaden your perspective, and that's why we always say you have to be really mindful, you have to be purposeful and very strategic with AI. Transformation, automation, operational efficiency, without a doubt, you can get to that with operational efficiency, with artificial intelligence, whether it's traditional or Gen AI, but there's all of these other facets that AI powered solutions could actually help us to achieve. And that's an area where a lot of organizations are not very mature in just yet. So if you think of the AI maturity curve,
Hmm.
most of the organization, now we're not talking about NVIDIA or Google,
No.
those are the very, very technologically advanced companies. I always think of technology when I think of organizations. You either have a technology developing company or a
Mm-hmm.
technology consuming company. A technology developing company like NVIDIA and Google, those are the ones that actually pioneer the development of all of these technologies. So they have pretty good handle on what this means to them and what they can actually achieve with. The vast majority of companies are actually not NVIDIA, Apple, or Google. They are technology consuming companies. And therefore, a lot of these are off shelf products.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, they need to make an investment to actually acquire them. And so you have to be purposeful, you have to be very targeted and not limit yourself to digital transformation.
No, that's great. And one of the things that I always keep noticing among this like large traditional companies, especially through my experience with the government of Canada, is like we always, as opposed to kind of repurpose or learn from different use cases, I see these large companies to always like start from scratch, like start their so it ends up in a lot of rework, and they're a little bit behind innovation. Like by the time they, catch up to one thing, it's like, the world or Nvidia or Google or Apple, like they have already deployed something else. So what would be your advice to some of these companies, and what do you think, what's the biggest barrier? Like why do these companies kind of always starting from scratch and not uh, in that space where they can do like rapid execution of different AI tools? Because a lot of the use cases are very similar in a lot of this different organization. Like yes, you have to think about your the business processes and your strategies and whatnot, but a lot of these functions could be easily, like we could easily adopt AI in a lot of this organization just by learning from someone else who have done so already.
All right. Really, really good question. A lot is packed in there. When you think of the any marketplace, um, it does consist of for-profit organizations and nonprofit organizations. While there are lots of similarities between both in terms of, norms, values, and structure, um, really there are some fundamental differences between for-profit and nonprofit. As we all know, for-profit, at the end of the day, they do answer to stakeholders. So stockholders, but we'll broaden our aperture a little bit. They have to answer to a lot of stakeholders. They have to really return good ROI, ROA in order to keep that capital investment coming. Naturally, they have to be on top of things. They have to be the most cost effective, the most profitable, especially if their marketplace is highly competitive. So that's for profit. Nonprofit governmental agencies as well. The space that they play in is slightly different. They don't have the pressure of answering to a very demanding list of stakeholders, if you will. They don't have a lot of pressure to meet certain profitability margins and objectives. Um, but they do have other challenges. They tend to be a lot more conservative. They are structured differently. And then, especially when you think of like tenure and whatnot, the two spaces are slightly different. So when it comes to AI, because AI does come with its challenges, so some of the challenges are privacy challenges for sure. There's fairness, there's the bias. All of these things have to be addressed. Nonprofit agent organizations, governmental agencies naturally are more conservative organizations. And therefore, when you think of the industry life cycle, which I go into a lot of depth in my book that's going to come out in January of 2025, when you think of the industry life cycle, before you get to the decline, and we talk about industries because industries are just clusters of organizations. Before you get to the decline, there's the laggards. Those are the ones that are the latest to actually adopt any technology. You are typically to find nonprofits and governmental agencies in that bucket. Again, we're back to these organizations being naturally conservative because of the significant challenges with deploying AI and this conservativeness in how they perceive things. It makes a field like artificial intelligence and not very a go-to field for them. They need to make sure that their policies have been developed to address privacy concerns, fairness in algorithms to mitigate the risk of bias and whatnot. So naturally, those organizations historically have been the laggards when it comes to technology adoption. Um, what's really common between both spaces is the fact that at the end of the day, any organization, profit, nonprofit, governmental, um, they do have strategic objectives. There is a strategic direction even for governments, and therefore you need to deliver on strategic objectives. Now, the lead time might be a lot longer for governmental agencies than for profit organizations, but at the end, you do have strategic goals that you have to accomplish. And therefore, what's another common thing between both is they both need tools, they both need enablers. So you always go back to AI as an enabler to my goals. Even if my goals have a 10-year lead time, I still need to go through the motion of understanding what my strategic goals are. What does AI, how might AI actually help me deliver on those objectives? Those things are really common between both spaces. Um, with good research, these governmental agencies can really hone in on a group of AI powered tools that have been vetted, where the privacy concerns have been mitigated to some extent, and they can actually look at the value that they can gain from deploying these tools. So that going through that motion is really the same for profits and nonprofits.
No, that's thank you so much for sharing that. And we have now, like you have touched a little bit about like biases and fairness. So now would be a good time to segue into the ethical consideration because that's something like we hear about all the time. Like there's a lots of risk with AI. There's a lot of that fear mongering into there's always going to be bad actors and good actors, right? So anytime we have this rapid evolution of technology, there's always going to be those who use it for the wrongdoing or with ill intention. So how do we ensure, like when utilizing this AI tools or AI platform or AI powered solution, how do we ensure that we are keeping those ethical considerations in mind, and what are some of those ethical considerations that we should be keeping in mind when deploying these AI solutions?
Oh, absolutely. So, in this space, AI is the same as any other group of technology, or technologies we've been developing over the years. When you think of internet connectivity,
Mhm.
5G, autonomous driving, and whatnot, think of one of the highlighted risks, which is cybersecurity risks, which is someone hacking into your system. Now, whether your system is a vehicle, it doesn't matter if there is a possibility of a cybersecurity threat or someone hacking into your system, that risk is the same, whether you're talking about AI powered solutions or not. That risk and how you mitigate the risk and the policies that you set and develop to mitigate the risk, that's also the same. Another risk in the AI space we've touched on a few minutes ago is obviously privacy concerns. One unique risk or challenge for AI is the bias.
Mm-hmm.
So think of any AI powered solution or technology as having a big army of really, really smart engineers. They're all skilled and there's lots of them, and their toolkit is really, really large. So when you think of an AI powered solution, always think of I have a big army of really, really smart engineers and analysts. That army does need a leader. That army does need one direction to go into. Um, when you think of AI, really it boils down quickly to algorithm and model development. Um, who actually writes the algorithm? It's really data engineers and analysts and ML engineers. So any bias that has been injected into the model, it's because a human actually did it. And so how you mitigate the risk of bias in any space, those principles really apply to the AI space. So when you think of, if you actually go on, even if you go to any search engine, go to Google and actually type in a powerful CEO, look at the images that actually get generated. It was a model that was developed using a massive amount of data and images. And that model has been developed to actually associate certain images with certain phrases. And so if you go to and type in powerful CEOs, most of the images that you will get are white men in their 50s or so.
Yeah.
There was in the images that were actually uploaded to train the model, those are the images that were used, and those are the tags that were used. And so the to address the bias, you go back to the developer because the solution itself, the model itself, is just going to aggregate. It's just going to speed up the deployment of that algorithm. It's the developer. It's the individual that actually developed that algorithm. Um, at the end of the day, organizations are really made up of us individuals. All organizations have codes of ethics,
Mm-hmm.
uh, very similar to our own code of ethics. So, however we define fairness, equality, diversity, and all of those dimensions, those are the same principles that we need to adhere to and follow when we develop models for AI powered solutions, because the essence of any AI powered solution is actually the algorithm that was used to develop the model. So that's really what we all need to go back to, the essence of it all.
Yeah, so really focusing on like values and that human aspect of it, right? Because whenever we think about like AI or these different technologies, we oftentimes think from a very technical perspective, like, okay, this is very complex and whatnot. But at the end of the day, we often forget that it's the humans who are the brains behind this technology. They're not developing
Exactly.
themselves, right? So we still have that full agency and control into how we are developing this and keeping those
Exactly.
values in mind, yes, while we are developing it.
Exactly, because at the heart of it, artificial intelligence is nothing but using machines to
Mm-hmm.
mimic how human thinking happens, how human decision making happens. So you're just putting machines to actually you're trying to deploy machines to mimic how we think and how we make decisions. So the principles that we actually uphold for ourselves and our children, those are the same principles that you need to carry when you develop AI powered solutions.
And it's really the data as well, right? Like to make sure that because good AI is basically good data.
Oh
So to
yeah,
ensure
absolutely.
that there's no biases when you're inputting those data into the system, because at the end of the day, like AI, as you mentioned, it's truly like it's just helping us process large amount of data sets into like whether you say like decision making or operational efficiency. It's just it's processing a huge amount of data sets that would take humans to do on a long time in a shorter period of time and helping us doing these incredible things. But the really heart of it, it's really like important that we ensure that whatsoever data is going into this AI solutions or tools are good, clean data, and we are putting into our like values and our ethical consideration into this as well.
Oh, absolutely. You're spot on. Mitigating the risk of bias, it really starts from the moment you define a desired outcome for this AI-powered solution. By the time you're actually selecting the data set, if you're not really honest when it comes to mitigating the risk of bias, even the data set that you've selected is actually biased, right? So if you, for instance, if you wanted to develop an algorithm to sift through data for mathematically inclined individuals, and the set that you started with, for instance, is all for males or predominantly males, that data set is already got some bias injected to it, right? So
Now, let's also talk about like humans. And we are living in an era where there's really a divide between those who are very technological savvy, or they have an incentive to learn this technology, right? Either for their work or for their day to day, they're incentivized to be technological savvy. But then we also live in a society where there's so many, when we talk about like seniors to individuals working in non-tech industries, to so many individuals in the world who aren't incentivized and are having a hard time kind of grasping all this technology and all this evolution. So, how do we kind of focus on bringing them along, or how would these organizations focus on making sure that our AI powered solutions are actually like human centered? So, we are not leaving anyone behind and kind of creating this equilibrium where you don't have to be the super technical person to be able to really use AI technologies.
um, really good question. I'm really big on using analogies to simplify concepts. So when you think of the AI space, think of a house or a household.
Mm-hmm.
Inside the house, you have rooms,
Mm-hmm.
you have furniture, you have amenities, you have different people occupying that house. Parents, children, even children, you could have teenagers, boys and girls and whatnot. So when you think of the household, it's really multidimensional, serves multiple needs, has multiple amenities and tools, right? So the AI space is that any organization is exactly like that, and you do need it to be that diversified, right? So whether you're talking about for-profit organization or
Mm-hmm.
nonprofit, at the end, in order for you to deliver the products and services that you're wanting to deliver, you do need an army of different skill sets, bring them all together, coordinate them, and actually produce what you want to produce for your customer, for your client. That diversity in anything, in everything within the organization is needed. So when you take AI, you go back to applying the right lens to AI. It's a tool. All right, where am I going to deploy this tool in my organization? And specifically, what is it that I will gain for my business value? And how do I quantify that business value? Once you know this, you will know which AI tool you're going to go to, who actually needs to use it, what skill set do you actually need to acquire it, to develop it, to deploy it in the organization, and who's actually going to use it. And therefore, it becomes reasonable for a group of people to become in an organization, to become really familiar with this tool. And then you have another group of people who's probably not familiar with behind the scenes of the tool, but they actually know exactly what they will get from it and how they could actually employ it or leverage it to advance their own agendas. Um, if you have a good understanding of what this tool is and what it will do to your organization, you are naturally going to know in your organization who actually needs to know and how much when it comes to this AI tool. Does it make sense for the entire organization to be technically savvy? Probably not. Does it make sense that they all know what's there to be known to the same extent? Probably not, because at the end, you do need that diversity in the skill set, in the expertise. I tie this back to being purposeful and being really targeted with AI. One of the traps the organizations also fall in is not we've talked about technology first, we've talked about AI washing. Another trap is really chasing the next shiny thing. And right now it's AI. And therefore there's this tendency that, oh, the entire organization needs to be trained on AI. Probably not. As an organization, um, as a promising tool that promises some benefits, you might want to give a very high level fundamental understanding of what this thing is, just so that people don't resist it, and so that you could actually correct misconceptions. Those things, for to achieve these things, yes, you do have a high level, you do need a high level of understanding, but it is very natural for a lot of people not to be very technically savvy in this field, just like any other technology. So if organizations, and when you actually relax the term organization, now you really you're talking about all people. If people are really pressured because they don't know what they need to know in the AI space, you just go back to the why. What is it that you need to know and why? If there isn't a very robust why, then don't feel pressured that you have to really code in Python, right?
No, that makes complete sense. And we're coming to the end of it. So I want to ask one question because I do have a lot of my audience and a lot of my listeners. There's this fear mongering, and we touched on it a little bit about like how with the rapid evolution of AI and this new technologies, people are gonna start losing jobs, or the whole career market, it's kind of shifting. And as you mentioned, a lot of the organization right now are trying to find individuals with those specialized skills. So what would be your advice, and what do you think are some of the key skills that people should kind of focus on or pivot towards so that they can still stay relevant or on top of this changing landscape?
Absolutely. Upskilling, the number one advice.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually any leader owes it to their organization, for their employees, for their employees to be on an ongoing journey, to continuously learn and develop. That doesn't mean that everybody needs to understand everything to the nth degree, but upskilling is probably the number one recommendation. What we see a lot of companies do is what I call very quick gratification when it comes to AI. And that's, I'm going to fire a number of people and then I will hire Python coders and data engineers. Um, is it very sustainable? Probably not. Does it really impact the morale? Absolutely, it does. And you know what? If some of your employees are resisting AI, you've just confirmed their fears. Upskilling, employee development is really the more sustainable way to actually approach this. Because at the end, the most precious asset in any organization are its employees. And if the turnover is high because you're either hiring and firing people, or because people are just resisting and therefore their performance dips, at the end, upskilling employees is probably the more sustainable way to actually do this. You go back to knowing exactly what you need the AI powered solution or tool to do, what skill set you need to do a capability assessment. What skill set do you have today? What skill set do you need? Technically, there will be a gap. Great. You go to the gap and say, okay, of my skill set that I have in my organization today, what kind of skill set is actually going to be a good candidate to be upskilled to bridge that gap? So take for example, any automotive or technologically based company, naturally is going to have a lot of engineers. Engineers are mathematically inclined, scientifically inclined, so they probably are easier to teach coding and whatnot, purposefully than other majors. So you start with that. You start with your capability assessment, know where the gap is, know what skill set do you need. And my number one advice is to upskill when possible. Now, based on the competitive position that you have in your marketplace, maybe it does take you time to upskill, and therefore the quicker solution is to hire incremental resources.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that, but it shouldn't be your go-to method because of the other implications that this has. Um, you have to also keep in mind that especially your employees, the ones that have a good tenure in the organization, employee loyalty is actually a big deal. And you want these employees to continue to be loyal to the organization. We all know it takes money to hire and it takes money to fire. And so upskilling is the number one advice. And that's the obligation that um, uh, senior leaders have for their organizations. At an employee level, though, you have your career aspirations. You know what your skill set is. You know what you are wanting to go or to be in the next 3, 5, 10 years. If you think artificial intelligence, that field, is going to impact your field, then I think it's also, our personal obligations to actually upskill ourselves. And there are a wealth of resources. You don't also have you're not limited to taking courses and going through tuition reimbursement. There are a wealth of resources out there. So if you feel that learning artificial intelligence, getting into that field, is going to advance your career agenda, then my advice is go on, embark on that journey. But I don't think everyone in the organization needs to be technically or AI savvy.
I think the somehow it got cut off.
It's either timed out
Yeah, I think
or,
it.
but I think you're gonna do some montaging anyways.
Okay, yeah. Just let's roll it up towards the end and then I'll just edit it, no problem.
All right, so I think it's recording. So we've covered lots of grounds today, and I'm happy to address any other questions.
No, that's really great. Thank you so much, Hanan. You touched on some of the very key points at the last question because I think yes, the onus is on the organization definitely to make sure that we retain those corporate knowledge. Like if someone has been working with the organization for 5, 10, or however many years, I think it's more beneficial if organization try to upskill their employees, retain those corporate knowledge, and that's a more powerful workforce as opposed to like always trying to go through the turnover and bringing someone new and getting them adapted to this culture. But at the same time, it's also the onus is on different individual to ensure that yes, this in the space of AI, you don't have to be super technical, but you also need to kind of be a lifelong learner, as I'd like to say, like always keep your mind open. And we live in this incredible world where learning is essentially free. You really don't have to go to university to learn, maybe to get credentials, but if you are truly into learning, there's all these free resources. Individuals like yourself who are like going into these different talks and sharing their ideas and subject matter expertise, so there's a lot of avenues right now in this world. If someone wants to learn about AI, or learn what's happening in this space, we can always do so, definitely. So thank you so much, Hanan. I really, really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your insights. I know you do have a bunch of different talks coming up in the next couple of weeks. You have a busy, busy schedule. So thank you so much, and I hope to stay connected, and we'll chat again. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure. Have a
Have a
good
good
one.
one.